Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. You can see your usuals for Tuesday. The Dean, Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter, the guru from Scouting, Ohio, is here. We've got a ton to get into. We've got some therapy for you linebacker lovers. We've got a look at today. Keep in mind today, our guys are headed to Big Ten Media Days. Dave Biddle, Steve Hellwagon, Patrick Murphy are on their way. That should be a very interesting experience. Normally, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, I think, are the main draw. This time, I think Northwestern might have a few more reporters there than usual, but I digress. I want to thank all of the Bucknutters. This particular podcast, the Bucknuts Morning 5, has now gotten popular enough that advertisers want to be part of this. They want to be part of you guys. They want to get their hands on the nutters. So we are going to start having some ads that are live reads here. They are not your standard ads. They are the kind that at the end, there will be a deal for you. So today is the first one. Just give me a chance here. Listen it out. And at the end, I will give you some vital information so that you can get something cheaper than it should be. Our first sponsor is Factor, which is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. You're on the run this summer. You need something to do. You need someone to get dinner ready for you. These are the people for you. They take care of everything. You can get it ready in just 2 minutes. Just heat it up. Make the most of your summer. 34 weekly choices and good stuff in here, man. Green Goddess chicken, filet mignon. Let's see. Calorie conscious stuff. All that good stuff. They have a protein plus side. They've got vegan meals, keto to calorie smart. I think you can see from the three guys on this show that William is the only one who does keto. If we were doing Bill Kurelic's advertising for food, there would be less taste here. Bill still eats burgers Kurelic style, which is burger bread, if we're lucky bread. All right. Sustainable choices, 100% delivery emissions, source renewable electricity from production sites and offices. Listen to this. Apple cinnamon pancakes, bacon and egg cheddar bites for the Bucknuts Morning 5. You should be all over that. Now, here is the key. Go to factormeals.com/Bucknuts50. Factormeals.com Bucknuts50. And you get 50% off. The code is Bucknuts50. All lowercase, no space. Factormeals.com Bucknuts50. You get 50% off, and you can start to look like the Dean. Okay, Bill, now that we've got our appetite fired up, the weekend wasn't what we hoped or, in my opinion, expected. I thought Kingston Viliamu Asa, I'm not going to be bummed out his name won't be around anymore. I'm not going to lie about that. But he won't be a Buckeye. We found out earlier in the weekend that USC was out. It was down to Notre Dame, Ohio State. I actually thought it would be Ohio State. It's not. It's Notre Dame. I'm not going to get into why he chose. He gave a very interesting, thoughtful answer. But we're going to deal with the results. Bill, it was kind of a surprising commitment. Let me say it this way. Usually for a guy of this caliber, we know who he's going to commit to. He kept it close to the vest. Take us through your Sunday.
Well, he did keep it close to the vest, and for good reason. I mean, he has said afterwards that he thought he was going to be going to Ohio State, but he went on his church retreat and just felt the calling to go to Notre Dame. So really it was kind of a change, as he mentioned, a change of heart, so to speak. And he went with Notre Dame. It wasn't a shock, at least I don't think, because knew this was a very close battle. I had looked back to what I said 2 weeks ago, and I said this is going to be too close to call. It could have gone either way. Like I said, Kingston even mentioned that he himself thought he was going to go to Ohio State, and there was confidence at Ohio State even very, very late in the process that they were going to get Kingston, but he went with the Fighting Irish. for actually multiple reasons. But in the end, it doesn't matter. He's going to Notre Dame. Sunday, he made his announcement, and obviously there was a lot of disappointment Buckeye Nation-wise. He is an outstanding player, the first player in the 2024 class that Ohio State offered a scholarship to. But, you look at the other side of things, and usually when Ohio State misses on somebody, they end up getting somebody very good to replace that person, and they're going to continue to look. I think that the obvious name right now that they have in mind, I guess you'd say, would be Booker Pickett, the linebacker from Florida. They are recruiting him as a linebacker, and he continues to steadfastly say that he's very interested in Ohio State and will make an official visit to Ohio State. He won't take any of his official visits until the season starts. He has not made an official visit yet. Other than that, I think that Ohio State does a really good job of creating new options and resetting the board, so to speak. They will do so. They will look at guys that potentially perhaps they could flip. They will look at guys that emerge, and guys do emerge during the season. And then you've always got the transfer portal. And Ohio State did very well in the transfer portal for this coming season. They landed several guys that I think are going to be quality starters for them. So, we'll see how that all develops as we move forward.
All right, I'm going to try and spin this positive. I'm going to bring it back to reality and hand it off to you, Mark. If you were going to try and spin this positive, this would be the two things I'd say. Linebacker is probably one of the few positions that has been somewhat devalued in modern football in terms of you can probably get a guy to plug and play there a little bit better. Secondly, they're deep right there at the linebacker spot. I think they've got the two young guys, the Hicks and Styles of the world, to kind of fill that role of an outstanding player in there. That would be tremendous. However, if you look at the board and all the other positions that they were still going after, I think there's a secondary guy to come in there that really fits the mold. Booker Pickett really isn't a traditional middle linebacker right now. So they're missing out on something by losing KVA, Mark. We ran your commitment, offer evaluation, and you had a lot positive to say about him. So as we put this to bed, it's fair to say this is a pretty big loss.
Yeah, he was a great player. There's no doubt. I mean, you can't go back to our podcast a couple weeks ago and listen to us talk about him, and all of a sudden today we say, oh, he's not any good anymore. And you said it. This has happened at least 10 times since I've been doing this the past 3 years, where we think we have the best player in the country locked up and everyone's excited, and then we don't get him. And then 3 or 4 months later, we sign another player. We're like, we didn't even know he existed.
Right.
Look at it like this. The prom queen at your high school is really beautiful, and when she doesn't go with you, you're devastated. But there's 700 other prom queens in Ohio. I bet you could find one. Yeah. And that's kind of, you don't know about any of them. You haven't seen them all. You haven't been to all those schools to evaluate how beautiful they are because you were so focused on your school during high school. And that's kind of like recruiting. We get so focused on our high school, what we're looking at, we don't realize how much beauty's out there and how many other linebackers there are that are great. And that your point about devaluing the position, yeah, that's not the marquee position where that skill set is so hard to find. There's a lot of 6'2", 200-pound kids or 220-pound kids. The hard skill sets are the big linemen. I'm not saying this just because we lost a linebacker, but it's true. There will be another great player. And at the risk of offending some of the religious people, I think we've seen the blueprint to flip a kid's mind on the last weekend is take him to the Bible camp and start reading him Bible verses about taking the path less taken or taking the path of the unknown or not what you know. I think that's what he alluded to as he read some passages that said, yeah, I should go to the place that I'm not thinking about going right now. So I've seen a lot of kids flip, but if, a retreat is the new way to do it, just start bringing out the right Bible verses that talk about, not doing what you're planning on doing.
To each their own. If I was going to give one more positive aspect of perspective here, remember what you felt like when Tommy Eichenberg verbally committed to Ohio State. It did not crash the site. There were not a ton of people on here talking about how we were about to get a guy who's going to turn out to be one of, if not the best middle linebackers in the country. And that happened. So all is not lost, people, please.
And also, don't sleep on how good Peyton Pierce is.
Right.
Remember, Notre Dame wanted Peyton Pierce really bad, and they thought they were going to get him at one point. So it's kind of a reverse situation. Notre Dame felt good about getting Peyton Pierce. Then James Laurinaitis went to Ohio State, and that completely flipped that recruitment around. Peyton Pierce has been recruited by Ohio State as the replacement eventually, perhaps, for Eichenberg. He's been recruited as a middle linebacker at Ohio State. I'm talking about Peyton Pierce, and he is a very good one. When Ohio State got him, there was a lot of happiness in Buckeye Nation. And sometimes when someone commits early, this often happens. You forget how good they are because he's not being recruited anymore by every school in the country. But if he was still out there playing his senior season, every school in the country would be looking, if not pursuing him hard. He's an outstanding prospect.
That's a great point, Bill. I put this up here because the pregame was loaded with questions about two guys. So let's bring it in here, Bill. At the risk of melting our website, there are some defensive recruits still out there and some big decisions coming. I think we all know the biggie of the biggie, the Aaron Scott Day coming up. So let's address that. But then you've got Edric Houston, Dylan Stewart, KJ Bolden, who I'm losing a little bit of faith in the chance he might come here. But can you please bring us up to speed? And then, Mark, if you want to interject every now and then on what you think of these guys that you've seen, that'd be great. Let's finish out 2024, Bill.
Well, Aaron Scott is announcing on Sunday, and it's Ohio State, it's Michigan, and it's Oregon for him. I really think – and, Mark and I saw him at the 7-on-7 last weekend wearing his Oregon gear, so to speak. I still think it's Ohio State or Michigan. I still have my crystal ball pick on Ohio State for that one, but we'll find out on Sunday. Again, in this day and age of everything, NIL and everything else, it's even more common than ever, it seems, for kids to make a last-minute decision and change what everybody thinks is going to happen. But we'll see on Sunday for Aaron Scott. He told me last week that he probably will not visit any schools this week, that he will just make his decision and his announcement on Sunday. That was what he said would likely happen this week. As most Bucknutters probably know, if they've been on our site, kids can start visiting schools again starting today. The dead period is over. They can visit schools again starting today. In fact, as I mentioned on our site yesterday, a Georgia offensive line commitment, class of 2025, I had a story about this yesterday on Bucknuts. Micah DeBose, he's visiting Ohio State today. So kids can start visiting schools again today. And as far as those visits, that gets me to some of the guys you mentioned. Edric Houston, when I talked to him this weekend, he wasn't sure exactly what he was going to do as far as visits this weekend, but he said, or this week, I should say, but he said he would probably visit Ohio State sometime this week. So we'll see if that happens. He's also talked about possibly getting to Clemson, Auburn, and that takes me into the next guy, Auburn. Bolden is going to go to Auburn this week. And again, Houston could as well. Dylan Stewart is talking about going to South Carolina. We'll see if that actually happens. And I've seen people say, well, if he goes to South Carolina this week, it's over. I don't buy that. He could go to South Carolina and still end up at Ohio State, in my opinion. We'll see what happens there. But kids are going to be getting out and visiting schools this week. Ohio State is still absolutely in the running for Dylan Stewart and Edric Houston and Aaron Scott. Those would be three huge additions. And if you look at the crystal ball right now, for all three of those guys, Houston, Stewart, and Scott, Ohio State leads in the crystal ball for all three as things currently stand.
When you hear that list of names, Mark, what jumps out to you?
I was just thinking about how Bill said Aaron Scott had the Oregon stuff on the other day. I made a video of Elias Rudolph giving us the Ohio State gloves and showing them to the camera and wearing red with his green and yellow uniform. It looked like Christmas, and that was our subliminal message, supposedly, that he was going to Ohio State and he's now in Michigan. So don't read into like what you see with some of these kids. I think he had the blue Jordans on a couple scrimmages ago because they matched the Springfield uniform very nicely. So that kind of, I wanted to, talk to Bill or, capitalize on what Bill said there. As far as those three guys, they're must-gets. I mean, we've broken all of them down and talked about them at length. I feel like I'd be beating the dead horse with these guys, but KJ Bolden and all these guys were the top of the food chain. We've been talking about them, and it feels like these commitment dates have been so far off in the distance. I can't believe that they're coming up and the season's right around the corner, but this is the time.
We talked a little bit about this before the show, that we are about to flip the page recruiting-wise to 2025. I think if you follow the site and all Bill's stuff, we're getting more and more names in there as we're putting the finishing touches on 24. So it's kind of a blend here as we run it out. There'll be a lot of that kind of stuff coming on, and obviously got some great stuff coming today because the guys are on the road. Let's take a quick break here. Pay a podcast bill. Paying a lot of bills these days, including the one in the right corner that costs the most, the Dean, the real Bill. All right. So I had this premonition is not the right word, but I had this burst yesterday. I was watching, I can't remember what it was, but an update came across the screen that Buffalo Bills running back, Nyheim Hines was lost for the season in a kind of jet ski accident. And right after that, it says Lions defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had a non-contact injury on the first day of practice and was gone for the year. And so it reminded me, and I've told you guys this, I'm a Cowboys fan, that for professional football, I live in fear of the scroll in the preseason. You just see a burst like ... Tony Pollard was sidelined with. You get one injury for no reason, and your season is affected so tremendously in football. And it's like do they have contact? Do they not? So I operate in fear with the pro guys because I think in the pros the drop off 1 to 2 can be massive. Now, we happen to deal with Ohio State. That's got arguably the deepest. I think you can make an argument that Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia have the deepest rosters in organized football anywhere. There aren't many places where you can lose a quarterback or running back or a wide receiver. Ohio State being the example last year. They lost the number one receiver in the country, and the guy who stepped into the fold became the number one receiver in the country. That's not a luxury most football teams have. So, long story short, I asked Bill and Mark to name for this season the most irreplaceable Buckeye. I think the last few seasons this might have been a little bit easier given the quarterback situation. Now it's changed. Bill, I'm going to let you go first. For this season, who is the one Buckeye Ohio State cannot afford to lose?
Well, I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. You might wonder, why would you go with a wide receiver when they got Ibuka and they got a whole bunch of other, in some cases, younger guys, but, a stable of great wide receivers. But I'll get back to that Georgia game. I really believe if Marvin Harrison finishes that game, Ohio State wins. I'll always believe that. He's just that good to me that you got to have him. I mean, I think he's going to be a top 1, 2, 3 player picked in the NFL draft, and you don't want to lose those guys. I think he is that valuable to Ohio State. And if he would be my 1A, if I had to pick a 1B, I'd go with JT Tuimoloau. I think he is going to have just a spectacular season for Ohio State and then be a high first-round NFL draft choice. And to be honest, Ohio State's defense was better last year, but they still haven't been weren't at the level that Bucknuts fans want to see them at. And I think they're going to be really good this year. And I think a lot of it is going to be, you got to have JT Tuimoloau on the field and creating havoc. And you saw what he did in one game last year where he was just spectacular. So he would be my 1B guy.
Now, his Penn State game, when you look at if you go back now and even look at the stat line on that, that's what we used to call a Sega game. That's like when you make yourself in a video game and you get 5 interceptions and 2 touchdowns, a sack, and you return a punt for a touchdown. I'm not sure you did all that, but it was close. Mark, your vibe.
Yeah, Bill, I was on a bike ride yesterday when I got the question, so I had probably too much time to think about it. And yeah, the first couple names that pop in my head are the best couple players on the team. And you would think Bill's logic, yeah. So I tried to go a little deeper, and I tried to think, it would hurt to lose those guys, but thinking like a coach, where's our thinnest position? And and I was thinking, well, maybe offensive line's a little thin. We're looking at, so if you lost one of your better offensive linemen and you had to replace him with your sixth or seventh best guy, and you're already thin at that position, that may be a bigger blow than we know. And none of those guys on the offensive line are really the household name right now, where you're like, oh, we can't afford to lose him. Well, could you afford to get your seventh or eighth best guy on the field there? Would that make you feel like, oh boy, we got a real weakness now at left tackle, that our sixth or seventh best player has now jumped into that spot? Defensive line, I'm like, well, you got Jack Sawyer, you're loaded at defensive line. So if you lose one, you have linebackers. You said it earlier, Styles and Hicks. There's young guys. There's the replacement value. Is kind of what I'm looking at. Like, yeah, a lot of positions we replace with an equal player. Like you said, how do you lose Jackson Smith-Njigba and almost come out better? Like in a quarterback, I don't think the leader is that far ahead of the other guy, where if we lost them, we'd really know what we're losing yet. And that battle's been going on, and they've been getting equal reps. So, the quarterback position is usually the no-brainer. Like, oh, if we lose our quarterback or whatever. Well, do we have a quarterback yet? Are we sold that he's 30, 40% better than the other guys, or is he just 8 or 10% better? This team, and Dan nailed it, is so deep. Because we're picking all 5 stars, backed up by 5 stars, with 5 stars in the weight room waiting to come in. You're not, like in the NFL teams, like where a salary cap has you over the barrel at a few positions, where, boy, we're spending so much money that we don't have anybody, to replace these guys. We're picking up free agents up. Yeah, we have free agents off the street with minimum salaries. And yeah, Tony Pollard goes down, and I don't think there's anybody in Buckeye Nation that knows who are the backups. Do you know their names?
I mean, do, but I'm a nerd.
Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott will get a phone call 10 minutes later, but it's not like that in college football. And this particular team, and it's probably why you asked this question, is last year we'd all be like, oh, it's the quarterback. CJ Stroud goes down, the season's over. And it wouldn't have been a very fun question to answer. But you're making us spitball here and reel a little bit and go outside the box. Marvin Harrison goes down. Buckeye Nation panics. There might be more of a deeper way to look at it, where you lose an O lineman or 2 O linemen. Maybe you lose your, you could be digging down to a kid who's not ready yet. And at Ohio State, not ready yet is not something we like, because that usually gets exposed. So there we go.
It's interesting you guys chose those, because those were I came down to Marvin Harrison versus Donovan Jackson. With JT Tuamalo, kind of my 1C. And I think Jackson, by the theory you're going with, Mark, is probably more valuable from a position of the guy coming in for him wouldn't be as good. But I think Marvin Harrison is so spectacular that the positive he brings, if this makes any sense, would outweigh the negative of a loss of an offensive lineman. That's kind of a weird statement. And look, you're putting like Emeka Egbuka would technically rise to the number 1 receiver role. And if you look at mock drafts, he's the number 2 receiver in the draft. So I get that. But Marvin Harrison is so spectacular. Like Bill said, if everything else goes wrong and the other team, believe me, Georgia knew we wanted to get the ball to Marvin Harrison, and they had a month to get ready for it, and they had no chance with number 1 draft picks all up on his grill. So he's kind of like the immovable object to me in some level. So I have faith that they'll be good regardless. I'll tell you what, I hope the answer by the end of the year is Kyle McCord, because if the answer is Kyle McCord by the end of the year, I think Ohio State will win the national championship. And that's possible now. Keep this in mind. People love my digressions. I know that. There'll be probably 30 complaints about the next 30 seconds, but I know we don't love ESPN, but ESPN recently just did their top 10 players and compared them to a current college player. Dylan Raiola was compared to Kyle McCord, okay? Sammy Brown was compared to Tommy Eichenberg. Okay. The top receiver was compared to Marvin Harrison. So we're doing just fine. Shed no tears for the Buckeyes. All right. Let me see now. I can pull up a few questions at the end here. There is a user on here today I will vet, but there's a borderline celebrity in our chat who he says he is. We'll have to quote him soon, but I'm going to have to vet this dude first. All right. Jim Knowles struggling in the chat. Obviously, he is taking the brunt of what's going on here. All right. Last question. That 4-2-5 defense is going to keep destroying recruiting unless the kid loves OSU and doesn't need to be recruited. Mark, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, as I was reading that, I'm trying to figure out why that defense would discourage people.
Possibly the linebacker?
Yeah, but, maybe in one position they feel like, oh, there's not 3 spots to start at Ohio State. There's only 2. But you get safeties that are going to love you because, when we come there's 3 spots to start at. I guess that's it's an outlier defense that kids aren't used to. So maybe there are kids that look at that and say, wow, they don't have a true Sam linebacker, or they don't have a true this. And I think I'm a Sam. But in reality, I hate to say this, but like the Buckeyes are recruiting safeties that go down the linebacker eventually anyways, and so I don't know how much that really plays into it. But let's put it this way, if Knowles' defense is good and we're winning, he could call it the 1-6 whatever 5, and people are going to show up. I think that might be a little too nuanced to actually steer a recruit away. I mean, all we do is talk about factors and NIL and what's bringing kids in. I really don't think a kid would say, "Oh, this defense doesn't fit me." But at the Sam linebacker position might be the place. But our strong safeties roll down to Sam all the time. And almost it could be a selling point where I would sell a kid, hey, our Sam gets to drop back and play a little deep safety every now and then, or our Sam gets to go do a little more than your normal Sam linebacker, which that gives you a chance to showcase yourself for the NFL in a different way. And I'm sure you could spin that. I wouldn't be sold that it's that big of a deal. It may be just one position.
I got to say, I disagree with that largely because keep in mind, every kid that comes here thinks they're coming for 3 years and they're off to the NFL. We have that as an established fact. And if you look at the NFL, the safety position has really changed. There really is no more big Roy Williams linebacker standing in the back of your secondary because that's too slow. You're almost it's getting smaller. So the idea of the third guy being a hybrid type, I would think would be more preparation for the pros anyway. Most teams don't start 2 traditional safeties anymore, or the third linebacker is a hybrid. And I think I can't remember the number, but if you go look, most NFL teams spend a majority of the time in nickel. And even when they do the starting lineups now, sometimes they'll put 12 guys in the starting lineup to announce it and just show you the nickel because there's so much split in time. All right, Bill, you're the one who's going to finish this off. And I'm not going to say it's a volatile question, but Jim Knowles has taken the brunt of the criticism for Ohio State giving up so many big plays against Georgia, etc. And then now with some recruiting misses, as it were. Are you worried about Jim Knowles as a coordinator? But more importantly, Bill, being what you are, the dean, are you worried about Jim Knowles' ability to recruit?
Well, I get back to last season to begin with. Ohio State's defense was better last season. Now, did they finish great? No, but they did improve. I think if you would have looked a third to halfway through the season, most Ohio State fans were relatively happy with the way Ohio State's defense had improved. They have got to, and Ryan Day's mentioned this, they've got to stop giving up big plays. That is the task. And I think they will be better this year. I think this year is going to be the big year for Jim Knowles. You put your system in and it doesn't all, transpire exactly the way you want the first season. That's not that unusual. It doesn't, sometimes things take a little time. And I think they have the players this year to get things done. I think they're a lot stronger in the secondary with some of the transfer portal guys they brought in. On the edge, they've got Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau at defensive ends. Those guys are real. They were high 5-star guys who I think are going to be very good. I just think they're going to be really pretty darn strong this year, but they've got to get it done and they've got to stop giving up big plays. And hopefully Jim Knowles will figure out how to do that. Ryan Day has mentioned we got to get that done and that'll tell the tale, of Jim Knowles defensively. How good are they this year? On the recruiting front, I think it's, they have missed on some guys. There's no question about that. And, but they've also hit on, Peyton Pierce, obviously was a big get. They beat Notre Dame, and James Laurinaitis has been a big help on the recruiting trail for Ohio State. Now, does James Laurinaitis become a full-time coach and go out and be able to recruit on the road and all? That would help a lot. If not, then Jim Knowles, I think, definitely has to, get results moving forward. More results, I should say. As I mentioned, they've got Peyton Pierce. But I think it would be great, certainly, if James Laurinaitis becomes a full-time coach eventually and can go out on the road recruiting. I think that would help immensely. But if not, then Jim Knowles has got to get it done.
Yeah, this is going to be a big next month or so.
I had a little point to add. Bill got me thinking about this in the second year of a defense. And this is just the coach in me and seeing this happen over and over throughout time is a lot of times when players get a new system, or even if a player transfers in from another system to Ohio State system, they come in and they're reading and reacting. They're reading and reacting. The word we're going to look for this year is anticipation. These kids should now be anticipating things instead of reading and reacting to what they see. And when you start to anticipate things and you've been through, it's like going to a new city and driving around on vacation. You don't know where you're going. You're following the maps or whatever. As compared to your own city, you've been there every day. You know all the back roads. You know all the shortcuts. You know how to miss all the traffic. That's kind of what it's like in the second year of a defense, or the second year. And I'd say this, if a new player came into this defense from another school, they would have a year where they're kind of out there reacting and they're a split second off, and they might be a great player. And I've had great players come into systems I've coached, and it takes them a while to be as good as you think they should be in your system, right? Because they just don't get it yet. And from the terminology to the where you're aligning to the formations, it should be home this year, and there shouldn't be any excuses next year. If they don't get better, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I want to add, as a longtime high school coach, I was a head coach at a big high school in Ohio for a long time, not in football. I coached some football and softball, baseball, but as a basketball coach, I was a head coach for many years. And I remember that first year as head coach, my whole system was new to those players, and the improvement they made from the second and the third year, from that first year, immense. It is a big deal knowing the system, knowing what to expect. And as Mark said, being able to anticipate, if Ohio State does not make that jump this year, I will be concerned. I think they will. I think it'll make a difference that Jim Knowles' system has now been in place. It's not all coming in as new.
And keep in mind, Knowles had to learn these kids too, man. He came from a different school. You don't know someone intimately and their strengths, their weaknesses, how they perform when they're super tired, how they perform when they have a cold. The factors that go into this, there's so many behind the scenes that we don't get a chance to check out. So I will remain confident in Jim Knowles until the end of this recruiting season. And like Bill said, we need to see some improvement on the field, but we think we're going to get it. Okay, that's the show. Keep in mind, we had an ad today. Go to factormeals.com/Bucknuts50 and you will get 50% off. Factormeals.com/Bucknuts50. We're going there right now. We hope you do too. Have a good one, Bucknutters.